Hello, and welcome to Jack of All Things Disney, a podcast created to satisfy your Disney craving. I am your host, Jill Sutton, and thank you for joining today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to choose your Disney cruise. I recently booked my very first Disney cruise, and I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about different criteria on how to choose the cruise itinerary that works best for you. So I've compiled a little list of a few different categories of things to consider when booking your Disney cruise. You might be a cruise novice and you've done this several times, you know exactly what you're looking for, or maybe you're booking your first cruise and just kind of want to know some of the options. So number one, I would consider cruise destination. What type of cruise are you wanting to go on? Are you wanting to go somewhere tropical, or are you wanting to go somewhere like Alaska or Canada or Europe somewhere? Disney has many different cruising itineraries, and just so you know, they put out their itineraries. It is currently August of 2023, and they have cruising itineraries scheduled out through February 2025. So you can go on and look at all the different cruising itineraries. You can see search by destination, and that's going to pop up all the cruise itineraries going to that destination. Just for reference, they go to Alaska, Europe, transatlantic, Canada, Bahamas, Mexico, Caribbean, and even the South Pacific. Something else to consider that I learned about when booking this Disney cruise was that they have one-way cruises. So what that looks like is you board the ship in Hawaii, you disembark in Canada, and then you're responsible for finding your way to wherever your home is. I just think that would be such a good thing to do in the future, especially once my kids have their passports and are ready for travel. I am really looking forward to looking into one of those cruising itineraries. Number two on my list of cruise itinerary is length of the cruise. If you happen to be near Australia, Disney offers 2-night cruises. Those are the shortest Disney cruise itineraries. Most often you'll see a 3, 4, 5, or 7-night Disney cruise itinerary. Now they have Disney cruises that are 10 plus nights. And those are going to be a lot of your one-way destination cruises where you are doing a transatlantic cruise or you're doing something in the South Pacific. Definitely something to consider thinking about how much time you want to be on a boat, especially if this is your first cruise. I would recommend maybe a shorter one, 4-night, 5-night, before getting into a long haul where you just don't really know how you're going to stomach being on a cruise ship. The third criteria I'm going to talk about is port city. So whether that is something that is close in proximity to you, maybe you have a train that goes right past that port, or maybe it's an easy flight into that port city. Those are some different criteria that might sway your decision on which cruise ship itinerary to choose. The most popular cruise port is probably Port Canaveral because it is the closest to Disney World, and a lot of people will book in their trips with a couple days at Disney beforehand and a couple days at the end. That just sounds absolutely magical to me and is something I'm going to be keeping in mind for my next Disney cruise. Fourth on the list is if you are interested in being on a specific ship. Now, Disney currently has 5 cruise ships. The most recent one is the Disney Wish. And it might be that you've been on a few of the cruise ships before and you want to try a different ship. Or maybe it doesn't matter. You haven't been on a single cruise, and so any of them are fair game. I think another criteria when looking at these cruise ships is maybe there's a specific experience that you want to consider going to. Just like the Disney Wish kind of has that Arendelle restaurant theming or some Star Wars. So thinking about that when looking at the different cruise ships may persuade you to pick a certain type of cruise itinerary. Once you kind of nail some of this stuff down, you can look at price. Price is category number 5 for me in choosing your cruise itinerary. You'll note that some of these cruises are offered at various times in the year, and they are going to be offered at a cheaper rate. That is probably because it is during hurricane season or school is back in session. Those 2 factors are probably the main factors in decreasing rates on the same exact cruising itinerary as earlier in the year. Definitely something to consider when cruising during hurricane season is to buy trip insurance. You just never know, and it's just better to be safe than sorry. Now, a lot of times when you cruise during hurricane season, nothing different happens. I've heard from a lot of people the weather was fine, there was no problems, and they had the same exact cruising experience for cheaper than someone else had. Definitely something to keep in mind, but that may sway you in picking a certain cruise itinerary. Number 6 on my list is Disney theming. Now, when you start to select those cruise itineraries, you're going to see that maybe it is during Christmas time and it's a maritime cruise, or maybe it's during Halloween time and it's going to be Halloween on the high seas. This year, currently, they're celebrating their 25th year anniversary and they're doing the silver anniversary for cruising. So you can pick a different itinerary based off of what they are celebrating, and the theming is going to be different. The experience is going to be different, and what they offer on the ship, including merchandise, is going to be different. So obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but it is some things that you can consider when looking at booking your next Disney cruise. Just to recap: cruise destination, length of cruise, port city, the specific cruise ship, pricing of the cruise itinerary, and if there is a specific cruise theme that you are interested in. I'm going to get into how we selected ours. Everybody's situation is going to be unique, but what it really comes down to is we had some airline mileage that was credited back to us that we needed to use up before the end of October. So I started looking into different places to go, and my travel agent suggested a Disney cruise. Now, in order to make full use of the kids club and having my husband and I get some private alone adult time, I needed my youngest child to be 3. So we had previously looked at 2 different itineraries. One was a silver anniversary sailing and the other was Halloween on the high seas. We're not as fond of the Halloween on the high seas, but unfortunately the silver anniversary sailing took place the day before my daughter turned 3. Now, you can risk it, but technically, when you book your cruise, the day you leave is the age you will remain for the entire cruise. And this really only matters to kids that are on the cusp of going into a kids club where their cost is going to be dramatically different. So had we booked that earlier cruise and my daughter was 2 at the time of cruising, we would have paid a 2-year-old fare. But we had to choose a later cruise because I wanted her to be 100% 3 for the entire length of the trip so that I for sure could take full advantage of using the kids club. Now, I had been told that had she boarded as a 2-year-old, I could ask the kids club if she could go in, but it is at the discretion of whoever is working that day. And I did not want to take my vacation and leave that up to chance. So we booked the later cruise, which ended up being the Halloween on the high seas. And then we booked out of Miami because as far as flight credits, we were only going to be spending a few $100s more to get a family of 4 to fly into Miami. And that just seemed to make sense, saving the most amount of money with using all of that trip credit mileage. So that is how our trip was selected kind of for us, but we are flying out of Miami on the Disney Magic for Halloween on the high seas, and I cannot wait. If you have any other criteria that you use in selecting Disney cruise itineraries, I would love to hear about it. Either send it to me on Instagram at Jack of All Things Disney, or leave a comment on this video here on YouTube. I can't wait to share more with you about Disney cruises. Up next, we'll be going into costs of a Disney cruise, what's included and what's not. Also, if you want to be a guest on the Jack of All Things Disney podcast, please, by all means, apply. Go ahead to jillgsutton.com/Disney. There are a few questions there that you can answer, and I'll be in touch with you about scheduling to get you on the podcast. I'd love to talk to anyone really about anything Disney, but especially if you're into cruising right now, I'd love to pick your brain on some of these topics. Enjoy, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.